So good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's neighborhood meeting regarding a proposed development at 500 Salem Road. My name is Andrew Gamero, and I'm a planner with the City of Barrie's Development Services Department. Just a quick overview of the meeting. So the purpose of tonight's meeting is to present to you the neighborhood, a development concept being considered by the owner and development team of 500 Salem Road. And this is occurring prior to the submission of a formal development application to the city. This provides an opportunity for the development team to hear initial community feedback and incorporate it into their plans prior to making a full and formal development application to the city. Just quickly, please be aware, we are recording this meeting for the public record. The recording will be used for the purpose of garnering your input and just to help us respond to inquiries. And will be considered public information. Please also be aware that as a registered attendee at tonight's meeting, your mailing or email address will be added to the mailing list so that you can receive further information about this application as it progresses, should an application be submitted to the city. Should you have any questions regarding the collection of this information, please feel free to contact the Development Services Department after the meeting. My contact information will be provided on the last slide, just in case anyone wants to reach out. I'd also like to let everyone know that we do have staff behind the scenes managing the technology for us tonight. They're here to make sure that the meeting runs smoothly, to grant participants the opportunity to speak, and to assist with any questions that may arise in the chat. If we do run into any technical difficulties, I just ask that you please bear with us. We'll do our best to resolve those and get the meeting running as scheduled. And if for whatever reason, if somebody gets disconnected, please feel free to just log back in. If there's anything you missed, this meeting will be recorded and uploaded to YouTube, or when we get to the question and answer period, you can ask any questions if there's anything that you feel you missed, and myself or the applicant's representative can answer those questions. Just quickly want to go over the expectations for this evening's meeting. So the intent of this meeting is to provide members of the public with an opportunity to become familiar with the development application or future development application and the planning review process, and to also ask the applicant questions and to provide some general feedback. So what to expect this evening is a brief overview of the city's review process and timing, just so you know what to expect in the next steps should an application be submitted to the city. A presentation from the applicant's representative describing the proposal, and finally, an opportunity to ask questions of either the applicant or city staff, and to provide general comments or identify any potential concerns you may have with the development proposal. A few things we won't be doing this evening are, firstly, city staff won't be providing any recommendations on the application or a detailed analysis on this proposal. This will occur later in the review process should an application be submitted to the city and when the application is brought forward to council for consideration. We also won't be debating the merits of the proposal, so please don't expect a debate between city staff and the applicant or city staff and the applicant and members of the public. This is purely an information session. It's an opportunity to ask questions, provide feedback. The opportunity for debate will occur later through the formal process when the application is brought forward to City Council. Just quickly before we get into the presentation, I just want to highlight the next steps in the application process should this proceed to the submission of a formal application. So this neighborhood meeting, it's established early in the development process to ensure local concerns are incorporated or addressed through the city's review. After this meeting, we do expect that at some point the applicant will make a formal application submission for this development proposal. Formal submissions do undergo a full technical review by city staff and applicable external agencies, and the expectation is that the applicant addresses the comments received from this neighborhood meeting, from the city's technical departments and external agencies through the formal review process, and from members of the public more broadly. So in conjunction with this, a statutory public meeting will also be held for this application at a planning committee meeting or future planning committee meeting should an application be submitted to the city. And at that public meeting, applicants present their application to council, they answer questions and also provide an overview and a response to any of the issues or concerns that are identified at the neighborhood meeting, so anything that's identified this evening. And as part of the public meeting, members of the public would again have an opportunity to provide verbal or written comments, and those would form part of the official record associated with the application. And following the public meeting, staff would continue the technical review process of the application, and the applicant may make necessary revisions to the development proposal in response to those comments, as well as in response to comments raised by members of the public. And once the review process is concluded, a staff recommendation report would be brought forward to council for their consideration. And all comments received through the neighborhood meeting, tonight's meeting, and also the future public meeting would be identified and addressed in the staff report and would form part of staff's recommendation on the application. And a staff report for this particular application, depending on if and when it's submitted, probably wouldn't occur until sometime later in 2023. So on that note, I'll now move on to the applicant's presentation. As I mentioned, the proposed project and application will be presented first, which will be followed by a question and comment period. So quickly, just before I turn it over to the applicant's representative, tonight we're focusing on a future consent or severance application, as well as zoning bylaw amendment and draft plan of subdivision applications proposed for the property in question, which is 500 Salem Road. And the applicant's representative is a planner from Innovative Planning Solutions, and his name is Mr. Tyler Kowal. And just quickly, Tyler will go through it specifically, but just in high overview of the three applications. So firstly, there will be a consent, which will sever off the existing dwelling on the west end of the property, thereby creating a residential lot. The zoning bylaw amendment application would rezone the eastern half of the property to neighborhood residential for the development of street townhomes and to open space and environmental protection for the conveyance of the Trans-Canada pipeline and any environmentally significant lands located on the subject property. And those lands would be conveyed to the city of Barrie. And finally, there's also an associated draft plan of subdivision, which would subdivide the eastern portion of the subject lands for the creation of townhouse blocks for a total of 34, I believe they're 3-story townhouse units, an open space block, and an environmental protection block, which coincide with the environmental lands and the Trans-Canada pipeline that runs through the property. So on that note, I will now hand the meeting controls over to Mr. Kowal, who will introduce himself and his team and then share the presentation with members of the public. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. I'm just going to share my screen. So good evening, everyone. My name is Tyler Kowal. I'm a planner with Innovative Planning Solutions here on behalf of our clients for proposed development at 500 Salem Road. I have a brief presentation following which, of course, I can take any questions or comments you might have. The subject property is outlined in red in this image shown here. It features a lot area of about 3.3 hectares or 8.2 acres, with 340 meters of frontage on Salem Road and a lot depth of about 100 meters. One single detached dwelling sits at the western edge of the property, east of which is the Trans-Canada pipeline corridor, as Andrew mentioned, which bisects the property in a north-south direction. So if you can see my cursor, it's the Trans-Canada pipeline is a clearing in the trees there based on the easement, and the pipeline itself, of course, located underground. A large middle portion of the lands, as Andrew mentioned, contains sporadic vegetation with tree cover and wetland, part of the Bear Creek tributary. And that can be seen based on the aerial. You can see where the vegetation starts and ends, and it continues between the pipeline and here where my cursor is. So it's a solid 2/3 of the property approximately is environmental features. And the eastern end of the property is vacant and free of vegetation. You can see that here again with my cursor. Looking more broadly, the subject lands are sited in the southwest corner of the city. Adjacent to the north exists environmental protection area and draft plan approved subdivision lands. And specifically, those were formerly the Depoche subdivision, and I believe they're now owned by Countrywide Homes. To the east are provincial land holdings, which are identified for residential development in the future. And beyond that is a new residential subdivision near the corner of Essa Road and the Salem Road intersection. So you can see the environmental protection lands here where my cursor is, north of that being a draft plan approved plan of subdivision, and then new residential lots being constructed and built on near this intersection here. To the south exists natural heritage lands as well as a concrete operation and stone supplier seen here. And to the west are rural residential lots fronting County Road 27, which of course runs here.
Sorry,
Under the
Tyler,
city
it's
of-
Andrew. I don't mean to interrupt, but can you please turn on your camera?
Oh, sorry, yep.
Awesome, thank you.
Under the City of Barrie official plan, the east and west portions of the site are designated residential as represented by the beige areas, while the center portion is designated environmental protection area as represented by the green. So again, the EP areas are here, environmental protection and residential designations on the east and west extents under the official plan. On this slide, you can see that the property is within the Salem secondary plan area. And as you can see, the mapping coincides quite closely with the slide you just saw previously, which was the overarching official plan designations. So in the Salem secondary plan, again, the east and west limits are designated in the beige as residential area, and they're designated natural heritage system in the middle portion as it's defined by the green area. And you can see the stream corridor. Currently, the property is actually zoned agricultural or AG under the old Innisfil bylaw 05404, and that is a consequence of historical expropriation from the city of Barrie of what were lands within Innisfil. And you can see again entirely the property is currently in its entirety zoned ag under the old Innisfil bylaw. For some brief planning background, an application for conformity review with regard to our development proposal was submitted in July of 2021. And conformity clearance under the Salem secondary plan was issued in May of this year. An application for consent to sever off the home west of the Trans-Canada pipeline was submitted in October of this year, with the intent being to offload this house so the applicants can focus on development applications on the eastern portion. And just to note, a condition of severance approval will be the conveyance of, as Andrew has mentioned, the natural heritage lands in the center of the property. And you can see those, it's a bit of a complicated drawing here as the severance sketch shows, but lands generally outlined in that blue, where my cursor is tracing, are the general extent of the environmental lands to be conveyed. It includes wetland features, treat areas, associated buffers, as well as the Trans-Canada pipeline, which would be again dedicated to the city as open space, and the balance of the environmental dedicated to the city of Barrie as environmental protection. As well as that, another condition of severance will be the conveyance of a 7-meter road widening across the entire frontage of Salem Road, and you can see that outlined in yellow. And then in green, again, it's hard to see, but the house here at the southwest corner of the property would remain as a severed parcel for sale should the severance be approved. And then again, the purple eastern extent shown on the drawing where my cursor is outlining is what would be remaining for potential development limits. And that is what we are here to discuss today when it comes to the draft plan of subdivision and concurrent rezoning. The proposed development before you today includes 34 three-story townhouse units in 6 blocks on the eastern end of the property. Lands designated for residential development in both the city's official plan and Salem secondary plan. The draft plan of subdivision proposes a future new municipal street running north-south, providing a connection from Salem Road, running through the development and aligning with the municipal street and future townhomes within the draft approved plan of subdivision to the north I mentioned previously. Each townhouse unit would be 3 stories with a gross floor area of approximately 1,600 square feet. Each unit would have an individual rear yard as well as single car driveway and single car garage. The development would be serviced by municipal water, sanitary, and storm infrastructure and qualify for curbside municipal garbage collection. And just to be extra clear here, you can see, of course, Street A in gray, the residential driveways have also in gray. The units, of course, in beige, and then resulting open space and backyards, front yards, side yards, etc., being, of course, in that light green color. You can see the road widening as proposed here, and then you can see the outline to the very eastern limit of the environmental protection lands to be conveyed as related to this application and consent. To facilitate the development, a concurrent application for zoning bylaw amendment will be submitted. The applicants propose to rezone the eastern portion of the property approximately 6.8 hectares in size, as shown with the diagonal hashing, from agricultural general in the Innisfil bylaw to the neighborhood residential or R5 zone under the current City of Barrie zoning bylaw. And you can see that is this area here, of course, corresponding again with the proposed draft plan of subdivision. And the balance of the property, as shown with the crosshatch pattern to the west, is not proposed to be rezoned through these applications at this time. And that's, of course, the balance here in this kind of checkerboard and chain link pattern. The table presented here displays the requirements of the proposed R5 zone, as well as the statistics achieved by the development concept. As you can see here, the proposal remains in compliance with the R5 zoning standards with no special provisions requested. This includes full compliance with yard setbacks, the number of stories permitted, lot coverage, and parking, among others. The applicants are nearing completion of various studies, reports, and plans required for the upcoming planning submissions. These documents are listed here for reference. And formal submission of the applications is anticipated before year end. From a planning policy compliance standpoint, the proposal provides appropriate compact residential growth in the Salem secondary plan area where it is encouraged. Additionally, it supports the city's greenfield density targets of 50 residents and jobs per hectare. It provides a street connection from the planned residential community to the north through to Salem Road, integrating with the broader Salem secondary plan area. As it develops, the area will be provided transit and active transportation options, municipal water, storm, and sanitary services, and the development will support the financial viability and efficiency of service provision. It also contributes to the mix of housing types in the area, providing alternatives to single detached dwellings, and provides much needed housing stock at a time where the cost of home ownership is increasing at a fast pace. And lastly, it promotes long-term protection and maintenance of the natural heritage system, as the applicants are conveying a substantial amount of environmental lands to the city, including buffers. And as mentioned, that will be effectively a condition placed on the severance, which will, should approval be granted, that approval will take place prior to the rezoning and draft plan. So in summary, the applicants propose to introduce 34 street townhouse units on the eastern end of the subject property through an upcoming draft plan to subdivision application consistent with the city's official plan and Salem secondary plan. Concurrent applications will be submitted to rezone the eastern portion of the property from the former Innisfil bylaws agricultural general zone to the City of Barrie neighborhood residential or R5 zone. The proposed zone permits townhomes and developments. The development plan remains in full compliance with its standards. No impacts are anticipated to the adjacent environmental lands, which have undergone extensive environmental study and will be conveyed to the city to ensure their long-term protection. And again, that includes buffers as well. And for these reasons, the applications and proposed development comply with all levels of planning policy, bolster growth, and we feel represent good planning. So that concludes my presentation. Thanks for listening. I'd be happy to take any questions or comments you might have at this time.